All right, my friends, I want to talk to you about a concept today that I call the season before the season. Now, this is really important for anybody who wants to run faster than they've ever run before. Essentially a PR. So if you're training to run a new personal best, we have got to ensure your training is going to support you doing something that you have never done before. Because big leaps forward in our racing ability are usually preceded by big leaps forward in our ability to train. So let's talk more about the season before the season. All right, so the season before the season is this concept that if you want to have a breakthrough, usually it isn't enough to have one good training cycle. You usually need to have two. That's why, let's say you're training for the marathon. If you're training for a marathon and you have yourself a 16-week training period for that race, that may not be enough to ensure you have gotten to this new level of fitness so that your PR on race day is virtually guaranteed. We instead need to ensure that your season is so good because you already had an amazing season first. That is the season before the season. Now, there's a lot of different ways of structuring this sort of double season approach where you are stacking the benefits of two distinct training cycles on top of one another. So it does depend a little bit on what kind of race you're training for and who you are, and we're gonna go into a little bit more detail on exactly that. But if you're someone who bounces from race to race and you're always starting a new 12, 14, 16, 18-week training cycle for your race, instead of really putting a lot of emphasis on the season before the season, this video might help you get to that next level and have your next breakthrough. So let's use a couple of examples to really drive this point home and help you understand the season before the season concept. Let's say you're the marathoner. You've got your 16-week training cycle all set for the marathon. What should you do before the marathon training season? Well, I think we have two options. And as we're going to see as we go through these examples, usually what you want to do in the season before the season you actually care about is something very different than what you're going to do in your primary season. So for example, if in your primary season you want to train for a 5K, it might be really good to have a base training season first. Now, in the case of the marathon, we have a little bit more flexibility. Because the marathon is a very long, endurance-oriented event, it can actually be really hard to excel at this distance because it takes such a tremendous amount of endurance. So rather than doing sort of the opposite type of training as marathon training during our season before the season, we can instead do more of that kind of training. So for marathoners, I like to see either a really good phase of base training or a speed-oriented phase of training where you're gonna focus on things like the 5K, 8K, or 10K, maybe even some shorter middle distance events if you can find those. So we are either going to be building a big base of endurance, really focusing on getting our long run and overall mileage increased, or we are gonna focus on speed by training for a shorter race. Now the caveat is that even if you're training for something like the mile or the 5K in this season before the season, we know that we're very soon going to be training for a marathon. And because of that, we need to maintain a very good long run. So even though you're training for a 5K, we should still be doing a double-digit long run in the imperial system. So 10 miles or 16 kilometers or more for your long run. I personally love to see even middle distance runners run a 12 to 15 mile long run, a little bit more if you can handle that, because it gives you so much more flexibility to then be able to jump into marathon training. You can go race a half marathon if you want to. And from a developmental perspective, it is patiently building the aerobic metabolism, exactly what you want as a marathoner. Even if you're ultimately training for short races like the 5K, that's where the focus of your workouts is going to be. That's what you're going to be racing. But on the weekends, we can still do a good long run. And when it comes to our base training earlier, if instead of that speed season, we're going to do a base phase of training before we start our marathon prep, Just like with the 5K training, we still want to build a good long run. Get your long run up to the half marathon distance or a little bit longer so that when you actually do start your marathon season, you don't have to spend the entire time gradually building your long run over time. You're already there. So you can build your long run, then run more higher distance long runs in the 18 to 20 mile range, and you can do some of those quality long runs. Those long runs where you're running some goal marathon pace work or you're inserting other types of faster quality running into your long run. We can only do that if we have focused on the long run before the season actually starts. That is the real value of the season before the season, particularly for marathoners. If everything hurts, I want to introduce you to today's video sponsor, Previnex. Previnex makes some of my favorite supplements because they're a supplement company that is voluntarily putting themselves under a lot more scrutiny than other supplement brands. They are testing finished products and raw ingredients, and they use clinically proven ingredients, and that is true for their latest product, Muscle Health Plus. I love this stuff mixed with some really cold water. It tastes delicious. And this is your anti-soreness supplement. This combines creatine monohydrate in the highest form, which means it's gonna be better absorbed by your body. And if you happen to have GI distress with creatine, you probably won't with Muscle Health Plus. And it also includes branched chain and essential amino acids and ingredients that are gonna help you better absorb all of these essential nutrients and aid protein synthesis. Because as we get older, especially 40 plus like me these days, you are not as good at synthesizing protein, so you need to take in more and hopefully use a supplement that's gonna help you synthesize all that protein. So if you're someone who's very sore after long runs or workouts, or you're over 40 and you wanna stave off that inevitable decline of muscle mass, I know I do, look into Muscle Health Plus by Previnex. There's a link under this video to learn more. And if you use code JASON15, you're gonna save 15% off your first purchase. Thank you, Previnex, for partnering with us and offering some of my favorite supplements. We can also look at some other examples. Let's say you're training for a half marathon. Half marathon is still definitely a distance event, but it's not as insanely challenging as an actual marathon. So in this example, we're gonna wanna do something very different than half marathon training during our season before the season. We're gonna wanna focus on speed. This is where I love runners to focus on those middle distance races. Anything that is 10,000 meters or shorter is a great candidate for the type of event to focus on during this season before the season. You're gonna be able to do a lot of different types of workouts that you would never do during marathon training, because if you are setting PRs in those shorter events before you even start your marathon training, you are just going to continue that rapid progress and improvement that you're currently on. You know, your running is like the opposite of the stock market. Past results do indicate future performance. So if you ran a PR in the 5K, a PR in the 10K, your long run is at 14 or 15 miles, I can almost predict that you are gonna have an amazing marathon training season, and your likelihood of running a PR in the marathon is going to be much better. And that's true for the half marathon as well. PRs lead to more PRs. So if you can set PRs in the shorter distances, you've just become a better runner, and now a better runner is likely going to have a better finish time in the longer distances too. Now, what if you're training for one of those shorter races? What if your primary goal race is the 10K or the 5K? In this example, we should do very different training than we're gonna do for those shorter races during our season before the season. We're gonna want a base phase of training. And the goal here is high mileage, great long runs, and an easy workout every week. We don't have to really focus on the workout too much, but we should do one relatively easy workout and continue to do strides or hill sprints or uphill strides regularly throughout this base phase of training. Now, training PRs usually lead to race PRs. If you want to break through in your racing, you usually need to break through in your training first. So if you're engaging in base training, One of the best goals to shoot for is number one, highest mileage week or highest mileage month that you've ever done. Let's really try to push the envelope with easy running to try to get to higher levels of fitness. And then on the flip side to that is your long run. Let's try to be super consistent with our long runs. Let's have the most consistent 4 to 8 week block of time where we're running great double-digit long runs, at least 16 kilometers or 10 miles, but let's try to get up to that half marathon or maybe a little bit longer of a distance for our long run. If you can have this kind of a base phase and then turn all that aerobic development, all of that endurance you've just built, and then layer that on top of the speed work that you're about to do as you train for your 5K or 10K, that is a great double season approach to those shorter distances that's gonna leave you probably running a personal best. All right, so I hope this was helpful for you as you plan out your 2024 goals and think about how you structure your seasons. Remember that training PRs usually lead to racing PRs. And if you want a big breakthrough in a race, you probably have to have a big breakthrough in your training first. That is the real value of the season before the season. It sets up your primary season for a lot more success. You're gonna be a lot more productive during that season. And if you want help planning your season, use the link under this video or go to strengthrunning.com/season-planner. You can download our season planner worksheet. This is gonna show you how long to structure your season, the kinds of tune-up races that are ideal for whatever type of goal race that you might have, how many tune-up races you should run, and then of course, where you should plan those within the season for maximum effect. I hope it's helpful for you, and if you did like this video, please subscribe to the channel and you'll never miss a video.